Hello, this is Luke, and welcome back to Be Successful, your favorite development channel. Thank you for still being with us, and thus we reached episode 35 together. All you have to do if you enjoy this video is to give it a like, and if you want your friend to know this information, send them the video too. Today, I want us to look together at the global macroeconomic situation. I don't know if you've already seen what's happening in China, but the matter is very serious. Taking into account the fact that the Chinese Communist Party totally controls the information inside the country, it would not be very smart to use the information from the Chinese press. But we can draw some clear conclusions from what is happening there. One thing is certain, that the banks are guarded by the army with tanks at this moment. Against whom are the machines? According to the people who have money in those banks, people can no longer access their life savings deposited in the bank. For those of you who do not know how the current banking system works, I'll make a brief summary. As you know, only a part of the monetary mass in circulation today is made up of cash money, the rest being digital money, i.e., some numbers in a database. If people try to withdraw their money from banks in large numbers, they risk running out of liquidity very quickly, and the entire financial system loses its credibility. Don't forget that the only thing that gives value to money is credibility and trust. A $100 bill only has value because everyone strongly believes it. This makes me sell a product or service for the $100, knowing that later I can always exchange the $100 for another product or service, because others also believe in the value of that banknote. In the absence of trust in a coin, it loses its symbolic value and returns to its intrinsic value. That is, it will be worth exactly as much as a sheet of paper. Almost nothing. In the absence of trust, this system collapses as quickly as a sandcastle in the waves of the sea. No one would be willing to work for $100 if they don't know for sure they will find someone tomorrow willing to offer them food for that $100. Now, if you're a European, American, or from any other continent other than Asia, you will obviously ask yourself why you should be interested in China's economy. At the moment, China is the second largest economy in the world, with an annual gross domestic product of $14.7 trillion. That totals more than Japan, Germany, India, and England combined. Such a collapse would undoubtedly lead to a severe crisis all over the globe, taking into account that the world's major economies are highly interconnected, and each of them relies heavily on goods and services from the other economies. Just as China holds over $3 trillion of America's public debt, the other countries also hold trillions of dollars of China's public debt, and an economic collapse of China would lead to the inability to pay public debt, i.e., government bonds. Don't think that any state, on the day the state securities are due, has the money to pay them. No! A few months before maturity, they issue new government securities that they sell and pay off the old debts with the money collected. But in order to do this successfully, there is a need for increased worldwide credibility towards the country's economic system, because otherwise no one is willing to buy those government bonds, even with high interest rates. Let's not forget that China is the economy that has grown the most aggressively in recent years, and we know that nothing can really grow without corrections. In any aggressive growth, artificial or forced growth is also hidden, bubbles that must be burst before the economy resettles and growth continues. That's why we have a major economic crisis every 10 to 15 years. I think that is enough about China today. If we are to relate a little to America, inflation seems to have reached a peak and spread a little at 8.5%. From my point of view, this is not a final top, but rather a local top, which we will pass over in the following months on the way to the final top. And it's not impossible to see a declared inflation of even 10% in America. I say declared inflation because the people who live in America know very well that their life did not become more expensive by only 9%, and I asked them to confirm or contradict me in the comments. The increase in the interest rate in the USA has not succeeded in raising the unemployment rate, even though unemployment is at historic lows, and still the number of jobs created by the American economy is greater than the number of people who lose their jobs. Just like any sudden growth that has corrections on its way to new highs, inflation is no exception, and I expect to see a high in inflation towards the end of the year, or even at the beginning of next year if things get worse. A really important event in crypto is the transition from proof of work to proof of stake of the Ethereum network. This passage would take place on September 14th or 15th, but it is not known in which year. You know the jokes circulating on the internet. Obviously, things are expected to happen in September 2022, and there's a good chance that this will happen successfully, as a test was successfully done the other day. What are the expectations regarding this event? Well, if the success is total, and there are no problems at all, we will be able to see a serious pump on Ethereum that will pull the whole market up, and then a crash that will impact the market again. There will definitely be a small correction at the time of the successful transition to the new version, because many bought to sell at that exact moment or shortly after, when the hype on Ethereum is expected to take the price strongly upwards. Why am I expecting a crash after this increase? Because everything happens instinctively, and the increases are amplified by the emotions of buyers who are crippled by FOMO, who do not want to miss the opportunity and thus buy impulsively. After they wait a period in which they will see that nothing spectacular is happening anymore. On the contrary, the price may even drop slightly, because as the whales mark their profit, all those who entered the market emotionally will sell, and thus the correction comes. A similar moment that is known to all of you is the exaggerated growth of the e-gold currency at the time of the launch of the Myar exchange and in the immediate period after. The moment is a little exaggerated because it also coincided with the highs of the crypto market, and so the subsequent decline was greatly amplified by the collapse of the market. You know our opinion on this channel about Elrond. We think it'll be one of the winning projects. Don't forget that Binance's CEO recently stated that, from his point of view, decentralized exchanges will surpass centralized ones in the next 10 years. If you were one of the lucky holders of the MEX or LockMEX token, you just have to wait for the right moment. Probably even in the next bull market, will increase the adoption of DEX, and then your MEX tokens will simply be gold. If you have resisted temptations and fears and accumulated and reinvested LockMEX since the listing on the exchange until now, you will be rewarded accordingly. Keep doing this for another 4 months, because these are the last months in which this currency can be earned. Then, as long as Myar exchange is working, you will receive generous rewards weekly from metabounding from each LockMEX token you own. This will be a consistent source of passive income, which will ensure you a cash flow without ever having to sell any LockMEX. Also, don't forget that after 4 months, the LockMEX you receive on the launch of the exchange will start to be unlocked. And that MEX, once unlocked, will be sold by many people to make a profit. Personally, once I unlock that MEX, I will change it back to LockMEX, most likely on the JEX exchange, thus doubling the number of tokens I own. At the moment, I own a little over 240 million LockMEX. I'm not advising you to do the same, I'm just presenting my strategy. It's your decision how you proceed. But the real gains come from the ability to defer current rewards for later, much bigger ones. So, returning to the macro analysis, I expect the market to continue growing throughout August and possibly part of September. What you must not forget, however, is the fact that we are still in a bear market, and every bear market so far has had such rallies of over 100%, followed by drops to a minimum lower than the previous one. This is a bear market. Sideways movements, increases of 50 to 60%, or as I said, even 100%. Then a new trough, lower than the previous one. Rallies can last, as history has shown us, even for 3, 4, or 5 months, making us think that we have escaped the bear market, and the surprise comes when you least expect it. I believe that this bear market has not yet said its final word, but it may take even 6 months until the next minimum, which, I repeat, is not something guaranteed. It's just what we've seen in past bear markets. If you have open long positions, however, I suggest you move the stop loss higher, closer to the current price if you're in a profit. because when the crash comes, it will come quickly, and it can eat the profits obtained so far. If you have an investment strategy, stick to it. If you don't have one yet, quickly stop what you're doing and create a strategy. Personally, I'll give you a little inside information about my habits. I invest daily, without exception, in the first 15 blockchains, but also a small part of the portfolio, under 1%, in coins like Doge or Shiba. And I think it's also a small part of the portfolio, approximately 5%, going to new, interesting projects, but which are built on other blockchains and do not have their own network. Of course, the percentages refer strictly to the crypto portfolio, and the investments in the stock market, real estate, and other fields are carried out in parallel without influencing the investments in crypto. Do not imagine that every day I go in and buy all these coins manually because it would be a titanic job. Instead, many platforms allow you to do this automatically. I personally use Binance, where you can set the frequency with which you want these investments to take place, the amount allocated to each transaction, the time you want it to happen, and many other options to be customized. The commissions offered by Binance are the best in the market, being 0.02%. The next step of my strategy is also important. When one of the coins I buy daily reaches half the value of the maximum price that coin has ever recorded, I stop that investment. As for the cash out part, I wait until new highs. And when one of the coins I bought reaches a new all-time high, I sell 10% of what I own. Following that, the subsequent sales will take place gradually, depending on the price evolution, the priority being clearly the recovery of the initial investment, and then depending on the market conditions, I will decide for each currency separately how much I will sell and at what price targets. Thank you for following us so far. Please tell me in the comments what your investment strategy is, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, so you don't miss the next videos full of valuable information. For those who want to support this channel even more, they can do so by becoming members, pressing the join button on the main page of the channel. Thank you to everyone who has chosen to do this so far. We are grateful, and try to continue delivering the best quality content on the market. Don't forget that you can also find us on other social platforms. Be sure to follow us everywhere, because we post different strategies across our network. Until next time, take care of your money.